such a big issue? China, United States. What does it mean for the rest of the world, given your rich knowledge about how the world has evolved?
I don't know about the rich knowledge, but give you a view. Obviously, the United States and China dominate. If you look at the numbers, I think the world is about $72, $73 trillion. Last time I looked, I think the US was GDP. I think the US was around 20 and China is around 10 or 11. So
yeah.
China's growing more rapidly. We're not allowed to talk about numbers anymore, are we? It's around 6.5% is the indication. The US, of course, is not growing at that rate. It's increasing its rate. So it's probably inevitable that China will catch up with the United States at some point in time.
Right.
It'll take a few years, or not on a per capita basis.
But what would that mean?
Well, I think what it signals, and I think the origins of that we're starting to see, is one looks, for example, at technology and the growth in technology. And of course, there is a feeling in the West, true or not, that the Chinese, for the last few years, have been stealing technology. Right? But I think on the basis with my colleague Scott, we take 2 weeks out of our diary and we go and visit Chinese companies and foreign multinationals here, not just in the coastal plain,
yes,
but in the interior. And the remarkable thing, we did this for the first time about 3 years ago, did it again last year. The remarkable thing is you are always impressed by the strategic thinking around technology and the execution. And for example, in the area of artificial intelligence, there are indications. America has the lead at the moment. You look at number of patents, you look at developments, look at companies, but the Chinese are rapidly catching up. And with the US administrations that we've had, not just this one, not just the Trump administration, but I think the Obama administration as well, I wouldn't say they were isolationist, but they certainly were less involved with various parts of the world, and that's left a vacuum. And the Chinese government has been increasing its soft power in a number of ways for a number of years. I mean, you go and look at Africa, you go and look at the Far East.
I always wondered, when the geopolitics has been evolving at such a speed, Sir Martin, what does it mean for business community?
Well, it increases levels of uncertainty because, if you tried to list the risks that exist at this point in time, or 4 or 5 years ago, or 5 or 8 years ago, there's a whole list of them. But you can drive yourself crazy trying to and you'd probably be wrong. If you look at the US position, certainly the relationship between government and business post the Trump regime, post the start of it, has been positive. So if you look at deregulation, you look at the tax bill, you look at what may be promised in the areas of infrastructure, and the relationship between government and business, it's much stronger than, frankly, it was under the Obama regime. You look here at China, strong government, stable government, strong policy, clearly articulated, filling that vacuum that I referred to, perhaps, that we see in the US. The Belt and Road Initiative clearly is an initiative that will boost China's position internationally. I think, though, what we're seeing play out here is the competitive environment, if you like, between the 2 major powers in the world, between the US and China.
So you are saying economies within themselves are developing with quite positive momentum. However, when it comes to interactions among these economies, there seems to be the possibility of friction. Is that what you're, politics of conflict, rather?
There's cooperation and friction. I mean, I mentioned North
Korea.
Is
that the biggest danger for business community?
Well, uncertainty is the greatest danger. And for example, if you look at what's happened in the last week or so around trade and the issues of trade, free trade, fair trade, however you describe it, obviously that introduces an element of uncertainty. But what I'm saying to you is, if you try to legislate every 5 minutes for those areas of uncertainty, you wouldn't get anywhere. So take Brexit, for example. Okay, what do we do about Brexit? I wasn't particularly enthusiastic, English understatement about Brexit. But what I do believe is now that it looks as though Brexit will go through, what WPP has to do is to make sure it maintains its influence in the 4 markets of Europe. So all I'm saying to you is the uncertainties that are created by some of these tensions, some things are getting resolved, some things are not, new issues are being thrown up. I think you wouldn't get anywhere if you tried to cater for all of them, and the uncertainty you have to deal with. And we live in a world of tremendous volatility, uncertainty, that you have to deal with.
Think about the world, the changes that we have just mentioned. We thought technology would help us to communicate, to know better, probably to even seek a new road of development. But so far, we have not seen that happen yet, even though it gives certain momentum.
No, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Okay, go ahead.
I think the technology has given us a tremendous facility and tremendous ability to communicate. Now, whether we choose to use that or not in the right way or the wrong way, we have to see.
That seems to be the problem. We don't have to see. We have some cases right now, for example, with Facebook recently, with Cambridge Analytica, things like that. This is only one of those many examples in which people are pondering and say, what are we embracing?
At its heart, somebody misled somebody about whether data had been destroyed or not. But at its heart, that is about privacy. I mean, interestingly, in China, the consumer seems to be less concerned about privacy. I mean, in terms of data, the amount of data you have in China outdistances any other nation on earth with 1.4 billion people. And Chinese consumers seem to be, at least at this point in time, relatively or more relaxed about the privacy issues. As a result of Cambridge Analytica, there's going to be an increasing focus on whether the consumer really understands when they sign up, when they agree and go onto a website, what they're letting themselves in for. So in that opt-in process, as we would call it, there has to be greater clarity. That's, I think, the message here. And of course, both Google and Facebook and Microsoft and in fact the Amazon and the 2 Chinese companies, Alibaba and Tencent, are all $500 billion companies.
Yes.
These are companies that have grown phenomenally and extremely powerful, and with power and size comes responsibility.
Right.
And I think in the case of Facebook and Google, increasingly they're starting to understand that they really at their heart are media companies just like you. They're not purely technology companies. They're media companies too. So it's getting to grips with understanding that and being responsible for the content and the placement of advertising, for example, in the context of that content becomes increasingly important.
But that's also crucial for your company. I mean, you have been experiencing this challenge of transferring your company. I know you work so hard. Ultimately, the ultimate direction, are we just trying very busy every day to catch up with what else is happening? Or actually we are trying to figure out a direction in which things are going?
Well, probably both. I mean, we see structural change, the digital disruption in production, in media, as you well know, and in distribution. And then we see cyclical pressures as well. Low interest rates for prolonged periods of time tend to cause asset allocation distortions. You see the rise of private equity.
Yes.
You see the rise of activist investors. You see the rise of what is known as zero-based budgeting approaches based on cost. This ups the pressure on the short-term pressure on the structural issues.
Sir Martin,
Thank you very much.
What a pleasure to see you again.
You.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.